impressed with what's happened. The photographs are getting better all the time, and so, and then we have a lot more photographs this time than we have ever had. So, and I really like what's happening. So, what I'm going to do, I guess we're going to start off by just talking about the winners, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the other photographs, and maybe we can learn a little bit about it. I don't know if I told this story. Years ago, I was living in North Carolina, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There's a place there called Old Salem, which is a Moravian village. And we had National Geographic come and shoot Old Salem for a 44 picture spread in National Geographic. And I've got the opportunity to meet the photographer who did that. And one of the questions that was asked is to get 44 pictures. Now this is one of the top photographers in the world at the time. He had all the equipment and all the help he could possibly have. There were several pictures that he actually brought a 40-foot van in with equipment just to take one picture. And so one of the questions we asked him when he was showing us his rejects is, how many photographs did you have to take to get 44 pictures in National Geographic? Now, does anybody have a guess of how many? Now this is a guy who, again, one of the top photographers in the world, got 44 pictures in National Geographic. How many do you think he had to take to get 44 in? Any guesses?
4,000.
4,400? 1,000? 10,000? He actually shot 25,000 photographs to get 44 into National Geographic. And I tell that story because, you know, we take pictures and we say, gee, why can't I take a picture as good as that? Well, it's because you didn't take 25,000 shots. You didn't have a team and you didn't have a 44-foot van filled with equipment. So whenever we talk about photographs and you try to compare it to the professionals, you know, they have great equipment, they have a lot of training, they have wonderful eyes, and they take a lot more pictures than we do. And one of the points that I like to make there is, when you go out and you see a good photograph, or a good scene that you want to take a picture of, don't just take one snapshot of it, you know? And in today's digital world, you know, when I grew up and we were shooting film or slides, and, you know, it was costing you $10 to process a roll of film, and $8 to get an 8x10, and, you know, I mean, it was expensive to shoot a lot of pictures. Today, I can shoot 1,000 pictures, it doesn't cost me anything. So don't be worried about, you know, take a lot of photographs. And I'm going to talk a little bit about bracketing, because that was asked today about that, and why you want to do that. Let's start off with the, which ones we want to do, scenic or people?
We're going to do person.
Somebody's calling me, but they're not going to get me.
No.
Okay. So for the personal, the honorable mention, that would be this one right here. Let's see, where are we? Huh? Where's the honorable mention? Right. Where do we have it? No, that's Karen's second place, it looks like. So we got the wrong one.
No,
here.
up on top right.
And
that's one over.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, this is person. Okay, that's this one right here. Now that people have asked what that is, and I had to look at that for a long time to figure out what it is. It's an old steam boiler. I think it was for a steam donkey. You know, I don't know, where was this taken?
It was taken on Opal Creek, and that's an old mining community.
Okay.
And that was apparently off the battleship Oregon.
Okay.
But they hauled it into there.
Okay, so it was an old boiler off of the battleship, yeah. So, but it looks like they actually used it, because if they put it, they built a fire underneath it here to use it as a boiler up there. So they may have used it for steam donkey. So Karen, she here?
I'm accepting in
Oh, okay.
place. She's on a cruise.
Okay.
I'm collecting for her.
And so, okay, and Trudy, this is third place. I really like this picture. I wanted to talk a little bit about how to take pictures of water. She pretty much froze it here, so she used a fast shutter speed. Another way you can do that is you can use a slower shutter speed, and it kind of looks creamy. So it looks like motion. Both of them are good techniques. I like this one because she's in the picture down here. It's well composed, and I really like the way that was done. So, Trudy.
And she's And where was it? Where's the subject?
You want to talk about that, Trudy?
That was River Falls.
And third place is Gerald. Now this picture, this,
Yeah, that's him. How can you have to
yeah,
get
second
it?
place.
We don't understand.
We don't get it.
This picture was actually damaged, and we just ignored that. I don't know how that happened. It got moisture on it or something, or something. But I really like this because it's well composed. If you notice, he's looking into the space. You know, he's not looking out of the picture. And the mountain in here, I think that was well composed. And Gerald, is he?
He's at the cancer club meeting.
Oh, okay. So,
You're gonna take his?
Thank you.
It's actually Bill's picture
Yeah,
of Jerry.
I didn't
Oh,
think
okay.
Jerry could take her
Okay, I'll
as a
change
picture.
that. Bill.
okay, and first place, Becky.
What is the point?
Yeah, this is, I really like this picture. If you notice, the lines are coming into the picture from the left to the right. It's well composed, people right in the center. Yeah, I just think that that's very pleasant. It's very calming, soothing, you know. So we all kind of agreed on this when we did these photographs. When it says I judged them, no, we actually all kind of looked at them and kind of came to consensus. But I think we did.
Which one is it?
Okay. Becky, you get a check for $5.
$50.
Okay, so let's go to the scenery. That's Trudy. And we really like this one, the fence coming through here. It was very well composed. The only thing I would say about it, it needed a little more color, a little more depth of color. And it may have just been the lighting, but it would have been nice if it had been a little snappier in color. But it's very well composed. The fence doing it. We all like that photograph. So Trudy. Here, you should give me lessons.
That's my old.
Okay. Third place is David. We like this picture a lot. Yeah, we really did. We had a lot of discussion about this one. And you know, this is David here?
Yep.
Oh, David, what lens were you using here?
The 7,000.
Yeah, but so he was just using. Interesting. He was using a camera just like this. Okay, so you don't need a lot of lenses and so on. But notice that the focus is right in here and it goes out. So you are probably using kind of a wide open lens, trying to. In other words, if you close it down, there would have been more. These would have been in better focus. This was a nice shot because it brings your eye right into here where the focus is, but you can see there's more going on. Anybody have any questions about that one? I really like that shot.
Mushroom.
Yeah.
And they were delicious.
Okay, Karen. Again, I really like this picture. It brings the line in. It's well composed. A lot of really snappy color on that. I really like that photograph. And I don't know, anybody have any questions about that one? So Karen, you got
Collecting her.
second place.
Yeah.
Okay, Gerald, we all like this picture. This is a beautiful shot. The water was, if you get a chance to come up and look at it, you have the reflection. You also, Gerald, did you use a polarizing filter on this? Or?
He said
Oh,
camera.
it almost looks like you used a polarizing filter because you can see, it got rid of the reflection. You can actually see the rocks and so on here. Just a really nice shot. Beautiful day too. So, okay. Anybody have any questions about food? Where does Gerald go?
Bill, oh well, I don't know.
Anybody have any questions about what we chose there?
See the rocks because it's in partial shadow.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ones we didn't choose that we thought were interesting and kind of get an idea of what to look for in a photograph. Becky, I already talked to Becky a little bit about this one. I really like this photograph. It's a beautiful spot, well composed, except for one flaw, and we all came up with it. All we saw was this black strip, this black thing here. Okay, that just stood out. So Becky or whoever you're doing that with, that's the kind of thing that you have to watch for when you're composing a picture. Okay? If she'd moved over just 3 inches, that would have been like right at the edge of the picture, and you would have gotten the composition would have been the same, but it would have moved that black line out of the picture. That would have been one of the top winners if that hadn't been there. We really discussed that a lot, because it is a beautiful shot. Any questions about that, or? So Becky, you could have moved a little bit further forward and gotten it out of the picture altogether, could have moved to the right a little bit, okay? But that's the kind of thing that you see when you get your pictures back, okay? And you don't notice it, so you gotta be incredibly aware of the foreground, everything, you know, when you're taking the shot. Okay, Trudy, we like this picture, it's very, very cute. Here's the flaw in this one. The focus is on the grass. You want to come and take a look at it. And this is a real common thing to have happen, especially with our automatic autofocus cameras, is that we forget that what we're taking a picture of, we want to hold our camera, hold the shutter down, as we're focusing on the subject we want to take a picture of, and then as we're holding the shutter down, we just talked about this, as you're holding the shutter down, you can move the camera for composition. Okay, and then push the shutter all the way down. Does everybody understand that? So when you push it halfway down, that focuses, and then you can compose using the, moving the camera, whatever, but that is what you're still focusing on. So this picture was really great, except that the grass was in focus and the birds weren't. Nice composition. Okay? So this is, let's see. I can't remember why we pulled this one out. Oh,
Should we take a look?
yeah, this was,
Pull it off. You can pull it out. It's okay. Just
this is a difficult one. This is a composition thing. And if you notice on this one, this is overexposed in here. Beautiful shot, beautiful scene, but we've got a little bit of an overexposure here. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit about bracketing. We could have exposed this a little less time, would have given a little more detail back in here, and this would have been a little richer. And so when you're taking a picture like that, what the camera meter is looking for is a normal scene, which is 18% of the light that we have is being reflected back. That's a normal scene. A lot of photographers will use what they call an 18% gray card, which is about your skin color, or you can find a kind of a light gray card at any shop, and 18% gray, you can meter that and then set your meter for that. What happens when you do this, if you have a really bright spot and a really dark spot, it wants to make that whole picture 18% gray when it meters it. So that means that the light colors get washed out. The dark ones, this is a nice exposure here, but it could have been a little darker, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about bracketing when we're talking about snow too. And then we have 3 snow pictures, and if you get a chance to look at these 3 snow pictures, you notice that there's a lot of detail in the snow here, but the people are completely blacked out, okay? Again, the snow has some detail, but I can't see the person's face. And there's a couple things we can do with these. Again, the snow is absolutely white here, but in the background we have these mountains, and remember the 18% gray. So the meter is basically averaging all this and trying to make the picture 18% gray. Well, when we're shooting in the snow, you're getting a lot more reflection off of the snow than 18%. So, there's several things we can do. And this picture particularly, if I had a flash, I could have metered this and then done what we call fill flash, and I could have filled in the flash on his face. And I would have seen the same exposure here, but then when the flash went off, then I would get detail in his face. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about, fill flash? So you're not using your flash to light the scene, you're just using it to fill in, okay? Fill in the darker areas. You couldn't do that with this one because the subjects are too far away, so you're not going to get a flash out of that. And so this one, if you notice, I really like the way the snow shows up with the shadows and so on. But again, we have this situation. In this situation, we've been better off to either take your gray card, meter that, and manually set your camera, or meter on the faces. Okay, does that make sense? I'm not losing people now, am I?
I don't understand what you mean there, but gray card, or even a gray card.
Okay, a gray card is, and I don't have one with me, but it's if you don't have a gray card, meter your hand, which is, your hand is going to, unless you're Hispanic or black, then, but this is about 18% reflected. So you meter that and you say, okay, it's f5.6 at 1/25th of a second. You manually set your camera for that, okay? If I'd done that, then I wouldn't have the detail here that I have, but I could recognize the people in the background. Okay? So again, when you're talking about taking pictures in the snow, it's a very difficult thing to do. And I actually brought the Beginner's Guide to Digital Photography, and it talks about that very subject, about how difficult it is to take pictures in the snow and what you need to do. And if somebody wants to look at this, it's here for you to look at. But so the other thing that you can do is with some of these, this one, the snow pictures, and I think if you're out and you're hiking, you should bracket your pictures. Many cameras have what we call a bracketing setting. So you can set your camera up to say, I want you to meter using the internal meter, and I want you to take a picture that's one step slower and one step faster. So I would typically go to what I call an aperture setting, which is the amount of light coming into the lens. And I would say, if my setting said I want f5.6 at a 60th of a second, I would shoot f5.6 at a 60th of a second, at a 30th of a second, and 1/25th of a second. Okay? Or you can go a half an f-stop too if you want to, but that's a full f-stop. And that means that in this one, the one that was overexposed would probably do a much better job of showing the people here. Okay? So, since we're not paying for our film anymore, and we're not paying to have it developed, we just pull it up on our computer. Bracketing doesn't cost us anything, and it's a good practice. Your meter is basically saying, I'm expecting it to be 18% reflective light. Well, some of them are and some of them aren't. And so if I bracket it, I can kind of cover for that. And the other nice thing about digital cameras is you can actually look at it and say, gee, that's overexposed or that's underexposed, okay? The third thing that you can do with a bracketed shot, especially if you're using a tripod, but you can even do without a tripod, you can end up with what we call high dynamic range. And there's a little program that you can get to go on your computer, and if you take 3 pictures or 5 pictures and bracket them going up and down, then you can combine those pictures and end up with things that look like that. So it actually takes all the exposures, takes the detail in every one of the exposures, and combines them into, and I can pass this around for people who want to just kind of glance at that and see what high dynamic looks like. So try to keep it quick. I'm here for any questions. If you have any questions about how to set your camera, or why we picked the ones we picked, or yeah.
If I remember rightly, you spoke previously in last year, the year before, about rule of thirds.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to.
Rule of thirds, okay.
In regard to the 2 snow pictures with people, the hands up in the air and the top.
Okay, well, this one is really two-centered, like what you're saying. Does everybody understand the rule of thirds? You want to take your, looking at your screen, you want to divided into thirds horizontally and vertically, okay? And the center of that picture is the most boring part of the picture. So your center of interest needs to be at the intersections of those points. Your horizons should be either at the bottom one or the top one. But if you put the horizon right in the center, and you put the subject's nose right in the center, it becomes a rather boring picture. Okay? So, just as an example, you notice this is a nice picture, but his picture, if I put his face right there, that would have been a boring picture. Same picture, been very boring. So, you know, and the other thing that's nice about this, one thing I mentioned, is he's not looking into the, if I had him looking away out of the picture, that would also be unpleasing. So he's looking into space. So that's a good thing.
No, I was gonna send it to him, no, when it comes off the walls.
Okay.
Again, here's a horizon that's up in the upper third. So, yeah, any other questions about that? Yeah.
I just have a question, you know, you talk about all these fantastic pictures and these multitudes of things you do with your camera and your computer. What about the dummy like me that just wants one I can take some nice pictures?
Okay, then that's a great.
Way I can do it.
Okay, the easiest way you do it is get an automatic camera. Either this is the one I showed a couple times, and he's bought this camera. This is a newer model of it. This is the 7700. It does almost anything you want to do, but it'll also take snapshots. And the thing I would say about taking a good snapshot, if I don't have an expensive camera, it doesn't really make any difference. I can get one of these cool pics, these little cameras, or you know, whatever they are. But pay attention to composition and pay attention to things that are in the foreground. You don't want a telephone pole growing out of somebody's head, and you know, just move over, just shift. Don't just look at what you're focusing on. Look at everything around the whole picture. So be aware of what it is. And then the rule of thirds, which you mentioned, is a really, it becomes automatic. You know, you focus on somebody. I'm focusing on you. I'm going to put your eye right in the center of the camera because that's what I want to be sharp. I'm going to push this down. I'm going to move the camera. So example, if I'm taking a picture of him, if I was focusing here, he wouldn't be in focus. So when this picture was taken, they focused on him and then shifted the camera to the right so that he got the mountain and so on. So it's a really simple with today's camera is to hold it down halfway, then compose it and push it all the way down.
Got a question. On that picture there, for example, up the area, you focus on him, okay. It's the focus, but then
I move the camera.
Then that sets up what exposure you're going to have.
Right.
So it doesn't you're not overexposed on
Right.
the view.
Yeah, most cameras, when you focus it, will set the focus and the exposure. So in this particular case, this is properly exposed because
Yeah, that is, but what about when you shoot the rest of it, would it be overexposed?
It can be. In this particular case, that's the feeling you got. So yeah, you can.
You had to sit there and wait for the clouds to move so that the clouds were blowing back and forth.
Right.
So you had to sit there and thank goodness Jerry just sits there and talks. Because the hardest thing was not getting Jerry, it was getting the mountain in the picture.
Well, you know, if you part of the problem with today's photography is it's so easy. If you've ever seen any of Ansel Adams' photographs, you've got to understand that he was using glass plates that he had to pack in a backpack. They were 8 by 10, and he would pack in 10 or 12 of them, and he would sit there all day long waiting for that perfect shot, and he would get one shot at it. And then you have to pack the glass plate down and develop it. So we have the instantaneous, oh yeah, that's a good exposure, and so on. So with today's equipment, we should be taking better pictures. The problem is we don't take as much time as he did, and so his photographs are still considered, man, I wish I could take one like that, right?
Would you mind talking about the one on the top left?
This one, okay, I didn't talk about that. Yeah, I really like that picture, it's very, very interesting.
Take it off.
Yeah, I'll pull it down. I can't remember what we said about this one. It was, actually, in this particular one, I would like to have seen it darker, see some more detail in it, okay? It was good exposure, I mean, good composition, kind of interesting, but,
Background overexposed?
yeah, I think the whole thing is overexposed.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, the truck would have been more interesting, darker, the background would have been interesting, but it's a really interesting shot, you know, it grabs you because you say, gee, what is that, and wonder where that is, and so on. So, it's an interesting shot, but in this particular case, I think I would have liked to have seen it a little darker. And then again, if we shot that in bracketed, we would have noticed that immediately when we looked at the pictures. Oh, years and years ago, I was testing slide film. And I was testing AGFA, Ektachrome, Kodachrome, all sorts of films, and we did a whole series of tests on them. And I bracketed every shot when we did this test. And rarely was the one that was properly metered the best shot. Yeah, I mean, and of course in that particular case, we couldn't put it into our computer and adjust the exposure. There's one other thing that you were asking me about, and that is the difference between JPEG and shooting in RAW. And if you're just taking snapshots, don't worry about what I'm going to say right now. But if you really are interested in getting really high quality pictures, shoot them in RAW and have a program that you can work with your program, your photographs in RAW. What is the difference? Well, the difference is JPEG, the camera sees all the light coming through the lens, and the sensor sees all the light coming through the lens. But if you're using a digital camera, you have what they call white balance and all sorts of things that you set up. So you say, gee, I'm going to shoot in fluorescent light, or I'm shooting in daylight, or I'm shooting in cloudy conditions, and so the camera then takes that information that you put into it, and it says, I think this is what this picture is supposed to look like, and it modifies all the data that it comes into the lens. And so if you say I want fluorescent and it's actually daylight, you set that wrong, you can't do anything with that picture. It's going to be green, and you're done. If you shoot in what they call RAW, it just takes the raw data that the camera sees and it records that. And you can then say, gee, that is 6,700 degrees Kelvin, or it's 4,300 degrees Kelvin, or it's 44,000 degrees Kelvin, and you can adjust the light. And the camera has not modified that picture. And you can do all sorts of things in RAW that you cannot do in JPEG, because once it's been converted to JPEG, a lot of things you can't do. Okay? So for those of you who are really serious about taking pictures, if you're shooting in JPEG, shoot in RAW and JPEG, or just shoot in RAW, because you can have it converted. There are programs that will convert it. Many computer programs today will do that already. So, but you can't print RAW. Okay, you can't take a raw image down to Costco or any place else. They won't be able to recognize it. So anytime you want to print something, you have to convert it to a JPEG or some other format. That help anybody who's serious about that? I had to learn that. I've actually learned that in the last couple of years when I've been studying it. And it's absolutely amazing to me how much more I can do with a raw image than I can with a JPEG.
I'll tell you a little story that I had this summer. I went up into the Tatoosh and we hiked all the way in the back. And about halfway in the back, walking up through the weeds, my camera lens got water in it. And I sat the lens up in the sun and dried it out a little bit, and I took pictures anyway. And when I came home, they were all cloudy, but they were all raw pictures. And I was able to restore most of the pictures and clean up all of the cloudiness out of the things because I'd shot them in RAW.
Yeah, there's a lot more you can do in RAW. That's a great story. There's a lot more you can do if you shoot them in RAW. If I'm taking pictures at a birthday party for little kids and I just want to capture the expressions, You know, the bad thing about RAW is it takes up about 3 or 4 times more space on your card, so you can take a whole lot fewer pictures. The good thing about that is you can now get a 64 gigabyte card and you can shoot forever on that. So, you know, again, we're talking about the expense of shooting on digital as opposed to what we used to have to do with film, which is basically minimal. Wow. Any other questions?
Would you like to go hiking with us sometime?
Well, maybe, yeah. You know, I apologize. Last year I was going to, or the past year I was going to do a photographic seminar down at the lake or something, and I had something come up and I couldn't do it. So maybe we can do that this summer, and when on a nice day we can go out and just go out and just play with the cameras and ask questions and have fun.
We'll let you redeem yourself.
Oh, I appreciate that. I apologize for that because I was planning on doing it and then something came up at the last minute. So.
Bruce, we've always told Tom to go take a hike.
So, anybody else? Does anybody have any specific questions if your pictures didn't show up here or anything? Go ahead.
Not dealing with the pictures, but last year we talked about special classes you could teach over at the lake
Yeah.
for the local club that would like to learn more about
Right.
some of the things that, whatever you were talking about. When you talked about the raw, I thought, more out in the nation.
Yeah.
But some of those things, if possibly you get together with Bruce or some of the people who like
Right.
to go to the lake and actually learn how to shoot something.
Yeah, and what I'm not talking about here, which is essential to taking good pictures, is depth of field, exposure. We talked a little bit about making the water look like it's running versus stopped and so on. And we can go out and deal with a couple of those things. But, depth of field, proper exposure, bracketing, if you have a camera that will do that. If you really are serious about taking pictures and then I recommend that you get a camera that's adjustable rather than one that just is totally automatic. And I've shown, this is the newer model of the Nikon. This is a P7700. I think it runs about $450 for this camera. And it takes incredibly good pictures. Your pictures were done with this camera. It's easy to pack and compact, it's light. And it can do all the things that we're talking about. It can bracket, it's got a little dial up here. Let's say I want to go 1 f-stop down, I can just dial that in here. 1 f-stop up, I can dial that in here. I can do all of it right here. I can say I want to control everything is the same shutter speed, everything's the same aperture. I can do that with a camera like this. And you pay for these little ones that don't do any of it. You pay $200 for those. You pay $400 for this, and it'll just run circles around it. So I recommend, if you really are interested in getting, stepping up with your photography, this style is a really good choice. I think Panasonic makes one, Sony makes one. You can go to, usually go to Pro Photo in Portland, and they can show you everything that they have that will do that, and they'll give you a recommendation on it. But to be able to make those adjustments is really important, and so I would recommend that you get one of these.
I use my cell phone.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the other thing. You can take absolutely incredible pictures with the new smartphones. A lot of them, I've taken some really good photographs with the cell phone. So you can't do a lot of adjusting though.
What do you call that camera?
This is a Nikon P7700, and if you want to look at it, you can. But yeah, there are several brands like this. I just happened to have started with Nikon in the 60s, and I've never been able to get away from them. So.
Where do you get your service at?
Pardon me?
Where do you get your Nikon service?
Serviced? There's a place in Portland. I typically don't, have a lot.
I have one.
If you call Pro Photo, they have a place that they recommend that can do work.
Is that any brand?
Yeah. Yeah. Pro Photo, there is a place there that they recommend, and I would, they usually, the nice thing about Pro Photo is they are the company that most professional photographers in Portland go to for their stuff, and So they're very, very knowledgeable there. Almost everybody who works at Profoto is a professional photographer or has been, so very knowledgeable.